Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
If you watch Autism Live, you know that I am one of the hugest fans of skills. I talk about it all the time in Wax Poetic about what an amazing, amazing tool it is. And we're so excited that you just saw the newest tool in the toolkit coming to us from Skills Global. And so right now we want to welcome for the first time ever on the show, Eliana Ferreira. And she is, I worked so hard, you guys, to be able to say her name properly because to me it doesn't look like it's spelled, but that's the correct pronunciation, Ferreira. She is the CEO of Skills Global. So welcome for the first time ever
Thank you.
To the show. We're thrilled to have you here and thrilled to have you unveil this new amazing tool, Skills Living.
That's right.
Thrilled.
Yeah, so Skills Living is the product that we just launching this week. Actually, look at Autism-live, just like, one of the first ones to know. And is in response to what we just saw in the video, right, about this effect of the falling off the cliff. Sometimes they say the service cliff, which is this, it's really a real, very key problem that is happening right now, where we've been talking about children with autism for so long, right? Well, these children grew up. Now they are young adults. They're coming out of high school, and we have found that, or studies have found, that schools are not well equipped to provide the transitional services that they need, and that actually by law they're supposed to provide. So now you have these children coming out of school, and we know they're still our children, right? And yet they don't have a job, they haven't been prepared to get a job, and they are not able or haven't been prepared to go to college. So now they have nothing. Right? I talk about like how we are concerned about our kids being bullied, especially in high school. Well, it turned out that these kids now are depressed because they don't have even that. And they are just sitting oftentimes on their parents' basements, just watching TV or playing video games all day long because they have nothing. right? And they don't have a job, they don't have a place to go. And it's many of them are depressed. There are statistics that show something like 42% of this population at this age shows signs of depression. So it's very sad.
It is sad, but you guys have an answer, and you've looked at some of the different data, and you're going to help us to understand why this product is so essential and then how it helps.
That's right, and how we decided what needs to go there, right? What are the areas that these young adults need help with? So some of the statistics, and we are pulling these, there's some sources, and we're going to show some slides, showing the sources where the studies that these came from. One of the biggest studies was actually commissioned by the United States Accountability Office to figure out what's going on with young adults with autism. So a lot of these statistics come from that. But the first thing is when you talk about vocational and life skills, right? So when we looked at that, about 53% of these young adults with autism receive no vocational or life skill services, okay? And this is during their early 20s. That's big. Yeah. That's like that population that we were just talking about, of not receiving anything, right?
It's horrifying, especially, we're going to see in light of how other groups are serviced. It's really horrifying. And it's important, I want everybody to know out the gate that we can do better, mm-hmm. and that there are ways that we can do better. And that's part of what Skills Living is all about.
That's right.
So you're going to see some scary numbers, but yes, know that the good part is coming.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So there's also this thing we were just talking about, the cliff, falling off the cliff effect, and we can show how these kids are really disconnected, like these young adults are disconnected, where you see that more young adults with autism were disconnected from both work and education than their peers that are in special education. So you think like 37%, that's what this graph shows, had no work or education. But, and you may seem like, well, that's as, students from special education, they have issues. But why is that autism is the one with the highest issue?
Exactly.
Right? The highest numbers in here. So,
I mean, if we can look at that slide again, what's really significant to me is that, take a look. I mean, it's appalling too that 34% of people who have an intellectual disability are also disconnected from work and from education. But when you think about the fact that a lot of individuals who are on the autism spectrum don't have any kind of intellectual disability and are totally capable of working, yes. These numbers are appalling, and the fact that it's worse in autism is that much more eye-opening, mm-hmm, for us, that, mm-hmm, we know that we've got to make a difference in this area.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And looking at the comparisons of if you have a speech and language impairment, only 8%.
That's right.
Which is a much better number. We've got to get this tipped in the other, mm-hmm, way.
That's right. Now, there are some reasons that these studies discuss, right, why that may be, right? And one of the things that they bring up mostly is the fact that many disabilities out there, physical or otherwise, it's the one issue, right? It's like, this is the problem, or this is the deficit of that student. So they create government can create a program, or nonprofits can create a program that addresses that one thing, right? But now when you're talking about, as we know so well, right, autism spectrum.
Yes.
Now it's not only about severity or high functioning, but it's also like, none of our children are exactly, yeah, the same as the other. They don't have the same issues. Autism is not one issue, right?
I always say it's not one size fits all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So exactly. So how do you create programs that will address, X for one student and Y for the other and Z for another, and we know how complex this can be, right? It can become very fast. So that's one of the main reasons why these numbers are worse for autism.
Okay.
Because it's just so hard to create programs that will address, because you're not addressing one deficit, you're not addressing one issue.
Okay, and that makes total sense. But again, we're going to get to how you've got a fix for that.
Exactly. So we don't want to, that doesn't mean that we should just,
Give up. We can't give
up. Or exactly.
We're not giving up on anybody.
Yes,
that's right.
No.
Okay.
Especially this community, right? We don't.
Absolutely.
Ever.
but the numbers get, and it's important for us to see these numbers because I think it's what motivates us. The numbers get a little bit worse when we start looking at jobs. We always talk about jobs and employment.
That's right. So, the other thing is employment or unemployment. And one of the statistics is 58% of these young adults ever worked between high school and their early 20s. And this number here includes, like, if you worked for 2 weeks and never worked again, you put in this number, in this 58, so which is not really representative of, like, oh, I have employment, right?
And I want to say too, it's easy to look at that and go, oh, 58, well, that's not bad. That's more than 50%. But hold on a second, because that means that 42% of individuals between high school and their early 20s had literally no experience of working in a job. And when we look at what is going to get you to successful employment, that is not going to work. 42% had absolutely nothing.
That's right.
Frightening.
Yeah. And then when we move to the next slide, talking still about employment, we can see how, comparing again autism, these students with autism compared to their peers, autism is much worse, right? So 58% here had any employment at all, when you can see that all the other disabilities that we mentioned before are here with learning disabilities, 95% employment rate, speech language impairment, 91%, emotional disturbance, 91%, intellectual disability, 74%, and then autism, 58%.
And see, this slide makes me nuts. Yeah. It means that we as a community have got to, and we've known this for a while. I'm not telling anybody anything that they didn't know, but I've never seen it put in those terms before. We've got to work harder, make it more of a priority, that in those years, our kids are given the same opportunities of other people who have obstacles, but the community has said, well, we're going to prioritize employment. We've got to do that. And and in order to do that, we have to give them the skills to be able to be successful.
That's right. And for each student, it needs to be its own individualized, set of skills almost, right? So it's like, this is what you need, which is different from this other student, which is different from the third student, which makes it so hard, right? But like, again, we're gonna get to what we have created that will help exactly that way, right? Create individualized set of teaching plan for these students.
Absolutely.
Right? Based on what they need on an individual basis.
Absolutely.
So the other statistic that is also alarming is how many, or how few I should say, of the students go to college, right? Go to post-secondary education. And when we look at the next slide, post-secondary education, we'll see, compared to their peers, again, autism is right at the bottom, just not as bad as intellectual disability, but much lower than everything else.
Yeah.
Right? When you see, like, even learning disability or emotional disturbance, autism is still, much lower in terms of rates of going to any college. And here is not really, this they graduated from college, right? This is just attending college, second, 2-year college or any post-secondary education.
Okay.
Okay.
Very eye-opening.
Yeah. This is these statistics are really eye-opening. Yes, that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, because you look at it and you go, okay, it isn't just that this would be hard. It means it's hard, but other people are getting it done, which means that we need to.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So because there is two ways of seeing this, right? Only 36% go to college, 36% go to college, but then you can also look at it and say, there are 36% of these students that go to college, and my child can be one of those, right?
Absolutely.
I'll make sure that my student is one of those.
And making sure that they get the opportunity, because we learn time and time again that it's not like you just pack your kids off to college, that there's a whole lot of work that has to be done to set them up to go to college. And obviously, if the numbers are this much lower than other groups that have a need for preparation as well, then we've got to start looking at this differently.
Yes.
As a community, as individual parents, as teachers, as people in the community at large, and in the autism community, we have to start looking at this and changing these numbers.
Yeah, there are 50,000, that's the approximation, 50,000 individuals with autism that come out of a high school each year.
Wow.
That have and they all have difficulties in getting services and work.
They're on
and
the
the
cliff.
Services is that whole thing of well, you're not a child anymore, so unless you're being covered by your parents' insurance company, which varies what up to what age it goes, right? But if you're not, especially now, if you're being covered by the school, now you consider a young adult, and all the services that you were getting yesterday, now you're not eligible for anymore today, because you turned that age point, and now you have to go and prove eligibility all over again now as an adult. And you have to go to each service individually, which before was handled by, the school, right? And that just becomes really a nightmare. Parents say it's just like, and you don't, oftentimes you don't even know what you can do or not do. There are no coordination of these services, and the transitioning services, or teachings in the high school were not appropriate. Were lacking, so it's becomes very, very hard for parents to help these students.
And yet, when we begin to look at, because all we all want is to set our kids up for success, right? Yes. So when we begin to look at outcomes, what do we see?
Yeah, so in outcomes, again, looking at this is autism, right? That we are looking at on our slide now. The things that these students had most challenges with in their early 20s coming out of high school is 81% never lived independently. 68 never lived apart from parents, and that means like you could be away from your parents, but maybe in a group home or something, right? That would not be considered independent living. But it would be considered a part of your parents. So, but 68% never lived apart from their parents. 64% no post-secondary education, like we mentioned. 42% no employment. No community participation, 32%. Okay, so that's the whole thing we were just talking about, living on your parents' basement, doing nothing, right? No services, 26%, and social isolation, 24%. So it's disheartening, and I don't want to take the show down.
Well, I think before you can begin to fix anything, you have to look at what it is, to know where you're coming from and where you want to get to. And I think a lot of times I certainly as a parent, think, okay, well, I'll deal with that when I get there. And often then we have the deluge of, oh no, what am I going to do now? And I've been through this with so many parents now who get to the cliff, and that I have started to, try to think ahead. I think we've all started to try to think ahead and get realistic about it. So get realistic about it. This is what the numbers are. And you might have a child who's 27 and be sitting there nodding your head and going, yes, no, I already know this. Or you might have somebody who's 16 and you go, okay, I hadn't really thought about it and seen that it was that severe. Or you could be somebody like me who has a 14-year-old, or a 3-year-old. It doesn't matter. But for all of us, we got to look at what it is so we can know what we don't want to do and get clear about what we do want to do.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Still talking about outcomes, our next slide is a summary of what we talked about. So 36% attended any college education, 30% attended any post-secondary education, ever attended 2 or 4 year college or vocational technical school, something like that. And only 30% ever attended 2 or 4 year college. 58% had a job for pay. That's another thing, right?
Yes.
We talk about having employment, and we were even talking about this, offline just a moment ago, of how so often the students may even get something, but it's not for pay.
Right, internships,
Right.
and that's a great thing, but internships need to turn to employment.
That's right. 19% lived independently, and that's absolutely doable, right? If you have the right services, the right teaching, and the right time. And 31% lived apart from parents. Our next slide on outcomes continuation is 76 had any socialization at all in the past year. So that means that they saw a friend at least once, or called a friend, or was invited to any activity. 76 sounds good, but if you think about, like you were saying, like the other 24 didn't, and this 76 doesn't mean you're doing that regularly. It just means like, did you ever get a call from a friend or made a call to a friend in the last year?
Yeah.
Right? So, these are the numbers.
24% who've had absolutely nothing. It makes me want to weep.
Yes, because a whole year of it.
Yes.
Just think about that, right? How that would feel on a day-to-day.
We wouldn't do that with a prisoner. We don't put people in isolation because we know that it's cruel and inhuman.
Yeah.
So these are very shocking statistics, but again, we're facing them so we can get to the good part. It's
That's
coming.
right. And let's talk about that. Let's jump ahead and talk about that. So skills living, very much like our skills for autism, right? That covers skills for autism, as many of your audience knows, covers from birth all the way to teenage years, right? And so skills living is picking up from there. So it's picking up from the teenage years all the way to independent adulthood, right? So it's not age-based anymore, it's skills-based, because there are no research or developmental norms about, when do you learn how to write a check, right? Even though nowadays no one writes checks, but there's a lesson for it.
Yeah.
So in case. So I just want to go really quick over the different curricula. And so in skills living, we have an assessment like we have in skills for autism. This assessment, again, just yes, very plain English, yes, no questions. Right? Does your learner, as we call it in skills living, does your learner know how to do this? Right? Does your learner knows how to pay rent? Yes or no? No. Then here are the lessons. Automatically, feeds to you. Here are the lessons how to teach. How to pay rent. Okay, so very simple. You can, by answering those yes no questions, you will have the results of it being, here's the teaching plan for this student, for this learner that we just talked about, the importance of being for this learner.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so important that we don't have a cookie cutter ever in autism, but honestly, there are some things that when you have a 3-year-old who's nonverbal, there are some things that you're going to teach all 3-year-olds that are nonverbal. But the older our children get, the less that could possibly apply.
That's correct.
And whenever I'm talking to parents that have teenagers or young adults, I really want to drive that, because I think so many of them are frustrated that they'll go to do something and they go, yeah, but it just didn't really apply to them. And they wanted to teach him something that, was the one thing he didn't need to know how to do because he's already really good at that. And so we lost him. It really has to be individual specific.
That's right.
In order to be successful.
Yes, and skills living allows for that because it gives you a map of what to teach, but then the lessons allows you to enter the specifics for that learner. So for example, we'll go over, the 16 curriculum. One of them is mobility. Okay, and over there's a lesson for taking public transportation, and one of those lessons is specifically on taking a bus. Well, we put it up to there, right? We don't specify which kind of bus or how much it costs or how to pay the bus. Like, we indicate that you need to teach the learner how to pay for the bus, how to see the schedule of the bus, how to plan the trip of where you're going to go, and how to plan for time and all that. But it allows for the teacher or whoever is teaching this to that student, to that learner, to enter the specifics, right? So now you know that if we are here in Southern California, it's going to be, say, the blue bus in Santa Monica, and this is the site that you go to. So allows for whoever is teaching this learner to put all the specifics, create all the specifics of what's the reality of that learner. Okay.
So completely customizable.
Yes,
Love
yes,
it. Love it.
Which really becomes like truly individualized plan.
Yes.
For each of these students.
Which is what everybody needs.
Exactly.
Everybody needs. Okay.
Exactly.
Should we go over the
Yes,
curricular
we should
areas?
definitely go over.
Because I get excited about this. For me, as a former teacher, it's kind of like I get excited when you go to an art store and they have all the art supplies, and it's like, what do you want to pick? Like, what do you want to do? And so it's like shopping. What skills do you want to give somebody? You can pick and choose what you want.
Yes.
16 areas.
Yes, and that's exactly how Skills Living was built too, where the first thing that happens when you set up your account, right, and you enter the learner information, name and demographics, the system asks you exactly that. Here are the 16 areas. We call it curriculum, but these are the 16 areas. Which ones is applicable to these learners? Which ones do you want to work on? And you can always add more later if you want, but that right there eliminates, it doesn't even show up, right, things that are not applicable to your learner because they might excel in some of those areas.
So you're customizing and prioritizing right out the gate.
That's right.
That maybe there's something, because as you said, in mobility, you have the ability to learn how to take a bus, how to do an Uber, how to make flight arrangements. Maybe that's something you want your child, your adult that you're working with to learn later on. But it isn't the priority right now. Right now, you might need something else, and you really get to be in charge of that, of saying, here's what we want to work on.
That's exactly true.
Okay, love that. We appreciate that.
So,
okay.
The areas are cognition. So over there you have beliefs, cause and effect, sorry about that, deception, emotions. You also have
it's the curse of this studio. Sometimes the air conditioning comes on and I get a tickle as well. But I would say this is probably similar to the cognition curriculum that we're familiar with from Skills originally. All the same kinds of things. We talk about this on the show, that it's important for people to understand that they are a thinking person and that how they think and look at things affects how they see the world, and that other people will think and bring their beliefs and thoughts in. And once we can teach that concept to people, then you have perspective taking, which really changes the game for anyone.
Right. That's right. And in this case, that those lessons may seem to be the same ones that we see on skills for autism, right? For the younger students, but actually it's tailored for the young adult.
Got it.
The other one is community integration. So things like accessing library or voting. There's a lesson for voting, which is very exciting.
That's very exciting.
Exactly. So really integrating, the individual in the community, right?
So if you have a young adult who's on the spectrum, who's in that 24% that we talked about before, where they're having no community interaction, we don't just sit there and go, "Ah, shucks." This is a way to work through a series of steps and lessons to make it so that that individual can, when they want to, interact with the community.
Exactly. Volunteering, etc. So yes, absolutely, because we don't want to be teaching these young adults just how to survive or how to not to be a burden on a parent because it's an aging parent, and what's going to happen to the young adult that we are so concerned as an adult what's going to happen, right, to my child. We don't want them to be just surviving, right? We want them to be truly have an independent life, right, where they are just contributing to the community in various ways, not just like I said, just being home, surviving, just being able to be by themselves. That's not the purpose, right?
And we all have a right to that, but I think sometimes as parents we get so overwhelmed by all the other things that we had to teach our kids, and we don't have the tools, and we go, "Oh, I want them to be more integrated in the community, but I don't know how." This gives you the roadmap so that you have the way to do it.
Exactly. I like that word, roadmap. That's exactly what that is. Another one is employment. So that's another curriculum. And over there you'll find things like completing employment forms and application, interviewing skills, right? That can be really daunting. But I like some of the things that we put over there, which is always like taking you to the more complex things, like to follow up to an interview. Right? So don't just show up to the interview and be a robot and just do these things, but actually following up properly. So maybe it needs to be via email if that, or it needs to be a phone call, and how to appropriately, follow up to the interview so that you really go after employment, right?
Yeah. Any of you who are watching who are having this moment like I am, where there's always things that we all want to be able to do. And I've said this fairly recently, I just wish I knew how to do this. I wish somebody would just give me the step-by-step of how to do this. And if you thought that for someone that you care about that's on the autism spectrum, this really skills living, this is it. It's here. It's here now.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next one would be executive functions, right? So language flexibility, paraphrasing, simple problem solving. I love that, teaching how to detect sarcasm. Right? That's
and we talk about executive functions all the time here on the show, that you can be wildly brilliant and you can take lots of action, but if you're not checking to make sure, how are things working, one little thing can take you off. And we all experience this, whether we're on the spectrum or not, and almost always it's an executive function problem.
That's right.
That if identified and triaged and corrected, can make success happen. So if there's any kind of goal-oriented behavior to get to and be successful, it's all in the executive functions arena.
Exactly. And in this area here, it's it's tweaked to be appropriate for the young adult and not anymore, the young student.
Absolutely.
Right?
Wonderful.
The other area is functional communication, and again, like that conversation we were having earlier, which is not all the curriculum will be appropriate for every student, right? So we're really allowing for the spectrum and, from the most severe to the highest functioning learner, and make it applicable to all that audience, right? Same thing for grade level academics. Then we have health and safety. Calling 911, for example. Caring for acne. So it's the health and safety. So there's things like on the personal care arena as well. So caring for minor cuts, right? If you're living by yourself, you needed to be able to things that we may not think of, the need to teach until it happens, right? So then these learners will be able to learn ahead of time and ahead of happening, right? There's a lesson there of earthquake safety. And we don't have one, but it's very timely because we got these requests already. There were some of our customers who were beta testing the tool, so we already got the request for hurricane and tornado safety, which we are working on it as we speak to add to the tool.
Wonderful.
Right? Housing. So community housing rules, for example, or paying rent, how roommates, how to find them, how to choose roommates, paying utilities. One that I find really interesting, one of the lessons is what happens if you don't pay rent? So it's not just exactly. So there is a lesson specifically for that. What happens if you don't pay rent? Right, so that you understand the consequences of it, not just how do I pay rent, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. Another one is, we call it independent living. And this one is things like from hair care, making a bed, nail care, but then things that go beyond that, right? Like gardening, for example. So I find that really neat that we have that, right? It's just, it goes beyond, right? Which takes us to the next one, which is leisure. That's one that we got a lot of requests for. Like, I don't want my students to just, like we said, survive, right?
Yes.
How can they have a fulfilling life? So leisure is part of that. So we have things like biking, bowling, hiking, locker room etiquette, right? Things of that nature, arriving to a facility. So it's a lot of, be able to survive and beyond be able to survive, right? Yeah. The other one is mobility that we were just talking about, the bus, right? So, but there's...
And I heard mobility and I thought, I thought you were talking about gross motor, but it's literally how we get from point A to point B on a daily basis.
Exactly. That's exactly what that is. So I have here like booking a flight, riding an elevator. That's part of mobility as well.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great lesson. Can I just really quickly, and I know we're running out of time, but I have been on a trip with my son and I said to somebody, I need the riding the elevator thing because there are many variables and sometimes he stands in the wrong place and he's too big and it makes people nervous. And he got a dirty look from people when we were in New Orleans because they were like, doesn't he know? But he didn't know where to stand. So I love this.
Yes, exactly. Paying for a taxi ride, calling order an Uber, right? So, very, very reality of everyday reality. There's also personal responsibility, so social planning and other things, but one of my favorites is pet care.
Oh, very good.
So,
because we know pets reduce stress, but if they don't take care of them, that's more stressful.
Exactly. Then we have relationship skills. And here is things like apologizing, assertiveness, compliments, constructive criticism, basically having meaningful relationships, okay? And then we have, which takes to social skills, eye contact, humor and jokes, technology, I love this one because it goes from setting an alarm clock all the way to using a fax machines. Nowadays we don't use as much, but in an office you do. So
Yes.
a lot of the vocational stuff is here, where like basic phone skills, business phone skills, okay, making copies. So lots of different areas of technology that is not just personal, but it's like in an office as well, which takes us to the most favorite one, which is the last one, is vocational. And here, vocational, we loading 25 different jobs in there. So it takes us way more than packing groceries, bagging groceries, right? Which is one of those things that we hear so much. But it has lessons on bussing tables, restaurant hostess, food preparer. Some of my favorites are apparel organizer, the people that fold the clothes, library clerk, office clerk, data entry, dog walker, and one of my favorites, veterinary assistant. So, like positions that are more fulfilling, right? And they are completely teachable and can put these learners, contributing to society and having a more fulfilling life.
Okay, so this is an amazing array, and it's available now.
That's right.
Launched this week. It's available now. If people want more information, they should go to where? Which website?
Yes, skillsliving.com.
Okay.
That's where people can go for more information and purchasing. And also the login is in that same page, www.skillsliving.com. And or they can call 877-975-4559, and I'm sure we have that on the screen somewhere.
Yeah,
and that's our number at Skills Global. And we have a special going on for those of you that are listening in today. If you call us, you need to call to get that. If you call us and tell us that Shannon sent you, right?
That's right. You want the autism-live discount. Just say, Shannon sent me. I want the autism-live discount. We need to give them that number again. And Samantha, if you can get that up on the screen for us, it's 877-975-4559. And I'm going to say that again for those of you who listen to us on iTunes and don't get a visual. 877-975-4559. Now tell them what the Shannon special discount, the autism-live discount.
That's right. The Shannon discount, we should call it the Shannon discount. It sounds so much catchier. Is 30%. So it's a very sizable discount.
I like it.
And we're doing that for a limited time. But if you say that Shannon sent you, you need to call though, right?
Yes.
Call us, and you get the 30%.
It's a love. Thank you so much for extending that for our viewers. I'm always looking for a chance to save you guys a little bit of time and a little bit of money, right? And so then you can try it out, see all the different things that you can be working on. Mm-hmm. It's a very exciting new tool. And there's so much in there. I can't wait to play with it. I'm excited about it. And I can see already that there are so many things that I've already identified that I want to teach my son. We don't have to wait until they're 18.
That's right.
What's the earliest age that you recommend, or is it just open to interpretation for people?
Well, Skills Living is taking... It starts for students that are starting on transitional services, right?
Okay.
So or the transitional time, and that officially is 14 years old. So if your student is 14 or older, they're ready for Skills Living.
It's very exciting, you guys. So we're almost out of time. I really want to thank you. I want to say again, 877-975-4559 is the number to call and say that you want the Shannon discount.
That's right.
Autism-live discount.
That's
that we're calling
right.
it. Tell them Shannon sent you to get that 30% off. It's amazing, amazing tool.
Yeah.